Welcome to the Earning Freedom Program. I am Michael Santos with michaelsantos.com and prisonprofessor.com, and now I am back with lesson number 5, or module number 5 of the Earning Freedom Mastermind Course. And this time we are going to be talking about action and the importance of incremental action steps. But before I begin this module, I really want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to share this message with you. I also want to recap a little bit about what we learned in modules 1, 2, 3, and 4, just in case there are any newcomers to the program who are embarking upon this journey with us for the first time. I want to give you a little bit of background, which as I do with every module. So this all begins with me sharing strategies and stories and lessons that I learned from masterminds. They are masterminds that empowered me when I was at my lowest point in life. I made a series of bad decisions when I was 20 years old. A consequence of those decisions resulted in DEA agents coming after me, pointing their guns at my head and telling me to put my hands in the air. And I did, and soon enough, my wrists, my hands were locked behind behind my back. I was locked in chains and led into the Bureau of Prisons, where I began a very, very long journey. Now, when I got arrested, I was arrested for trafficking in cocaine. I was facing a sentence of life without the possibility of parole, and I went on to make a series of bad decisions right after my arrest. Why did I make bad decisions? Because I was only thinking about one thing, and that was, how can I get out of jail? I wasn't thinking about my life. I wasn't thinking about the bad decisions that put me there, only about getting out of jail. It wasn't until I was convicted of every count and facing a sentence of life without the possibility of parole that I started to accept and recognize I'd made a series of bad decisions and I'd better do something different. So I started to pray. Those prayers led me to a philosophy book. That philosophy book led me to the story of Socrates. And Socrates was a man who completely transformed my life. Socrates lived 2,500 years ago, but the lessons by which he lived, the philosophy by which he lived, is still relevant today. That's why I call Socrates a mastermind. That's why I designed this course. And here it is, right here on my desk. You may have a copy of this book or a PDF of this book that shows Socrates there thinking, because that's what he was a thinker. Somebody who thought about how every decision he made related to everything else in life. And every decision has ancillary consequences. Teachers frequently use this analogy of the pebble that gets thrown into the pond and it sends out ripples, and those ripples extend out. And a lot of times we don't think about how our actions result in ancillary consequences that live for a very, very long time. And I certainly didn't. I made so many bad decisions as a young man, not understanding how the choices I was making was going to influence the rest of my life and the life of other people. So it was after reading about Socrates that got me thinking about, what can I do while I am in this very difficult circumstance? What can I do to transform my life? And that's when for the first time, I think I started to thinking about issues and circumstances that are beyond my life. I began thinking about other people. And I began thinking about, what can I do while I'm in this environment? I've got to turn my phone off right now. What can I do while I'm in this environment to completely build something better? And those thoughts started me thinking about what I call avatars. What is an avatar? Avatar is somebody that I would meet in the future that I didn't know, but would have some influence on my life. And I wanted to impress those people. I wanted those people to see me as something different from the bad decisions I made when I was 20. So I was thinking about my future probation officer. I was thinking about the future judge that I was going to ask to let me off of supervised release. I was thinking about a future business partner. I was thinking about a future employer. I was thinking about people who would extend me credit. If I didn't do something, they were always going to judge me and think about me as a consequence of the bad decisions I made when I was 20. And I wanted something different. So I started thinking, well, what would they want? I said, forget about what I want. I want to get out of jail, but forget about that. What would they want if they were going to see me in the future and see me as something different? What would they expect of me? And it was those questions that led me to the first prong of a mastermind strategy, and that was establishing a value system. For me, the value system was really quite simple. It was a focus on what my avatars would want from me. They would want me to educate myself. They would want me to contribute to society. And they would want me to build a support network. At least that's what I told myself. And that's my challenge to each of you. Always think about the people you're going to meet in your future and think about what you can do today to begin influencing the way they perceive you. That will lead to your value categories. Once you have those value categories, as I did, education, contribution, support network, that might not be the same for you. But for me, that's what I decided. That's how I was going to define success. Then I had to define success within each of those value categories. And that began the focus of me thinking about goals. Clearly defined goals. Goals that would truly represent my commitment to education, contribution, building a support network. And I had 3 categories. I came up with one. If I got a university degree, my avatars would really believe that I was educated. If I contributed to society by publishing, my avatars would recognize, well, he really made efforts to reconcile with society because he's writing about issues that are helping us understand the prison system, and that's what I focused on. 3, if I found 10 people to believe in me, it would be easier for those avatars to believe in me as well. And that became my principled path. Those are the prerequisites. Establish your values, set clear goals, and then you embark upon the journey. That's what I found to be the case. That's what I'm suggesting for each of you. Identify the people you're going to meet in the future. What will they expect of you? Use that questioning tactic to figure out the values by which you're going to profess to live. Set clear goals that will make it self-evident that you're living in accordance with those values. And then execute the plan. How? By 1, as we said in lesson 3, have the right attitude. What's the right attitude? It's measured by 100% commitment to success. Number 2, next lesson, have an aspiration. See yourself as what you can become versus where you are. If you do that, now you're ready to take action, which is the focus of this particular lesson or module. Taking action. Understanding that you've got to take incremental action steps. Incremental action steps that are going to transport you from where you are to where you want to go. You need to take these steps knowing that the steps I'm taking tomorrow are not going to be the same steps that you take in 10 years, in 15 years. It's all going to be, all of your successes tomorrow is going to be predicated on the decisions that you make today. Just like in my case, all of the bad choices that I had made as a young man when I was 15, 16, 18, 19, 20 years old, all of that led me into that jail cell where I faced that sentence of life without the possibility of parole. And so, since I wanted something different, since I hated being in jail, I had to begin thinking of what can I do to climb out? What can I do to build my way into a better world? And that's what I encourage each of you to do. Begin thinking about strategies you can take, you can implement, steps that you can take that will lead you into a better life. Once you do that, you will find that you're unshackling the chains of your life and you're beginning to build this new incredible existence of self-empowerment. That's the key to success. That's the lesson I learned from Socrates and then from so many other people. So many other masterminds, many of them who have been dead for hundreds or thousands of years, some of them who are alive today and continue to inspire me. That's what I'm asking you to begin doing. Take incremental action steps, but make sure those action steps are consistent and harmonious with the individual you profess to be. Make sure they're harmonious with your values and with your goals. The definition of happiness, as one of my mentors said, is when we keep everything we think, everything we say, and everything we do in harmony. I'm asking you, are your actions in harmony with the values by which you profess to live? Are they in harmony with the man that you aspire to become or the woman that you aspire to become? Because if they are, you can find a sense of liberty regardless of where authorities keep you. That's what I found. And I'll tell you the story of how it began for me. After I came up with that strategy of self-empowerment that I learned from masterminds, I began taking the next step. What's the next step? Well, I told you I needed to get a university degree. How was I going to get a university degree? I was locked up. I had been a lousy student in school. I didn't even have an SAT score. And the reality was I didn't have any money because I'd lost it all to my attorneys and fighting this case. And it's just, my life was in a bad situation at that time. But you know what I did have? I did have this plan that Socrates gave me. And because of that plan, I knew I could do more. So I took one of those little pencils that are available inside of the jail, or I was already imprisoned by them, and I started writing letters to universities. And I told them the truth. I made a lot of bad decisions. I'm humiliated with who I am. I'm sorry for the bad decisions that I made, and I'm asking you for help so that I can do better. Will you help me? I don't have any money. I was a poor student in school, but I want to do better. And I felt kind of like I was a fisherman. I was out fishing for help, for sponsorship, for resources. Now, you know what it takes to be a fisherman. There's a lot of ways to go and catch a fish. I could go out to the beach and hold my arms out and say, "Fish, will you jump into these arms?" Well, maybe a fish will jump in there, but the odds aren't great, right? And you could say, "I'm going to get out of prison and succeed." But if you don't do something more, the odds aren't great. So the fisherman could take another step. He could go out in a boat, drive out into the ocean, cast a line in there, and maybe a fish will bite, but maybe not. But if he casts 10 lines or 100 lines, the opportunities for catching that fish really multiply. That's the approach that I took, the approach of a fisherman. I didn't cast one line. I didn't write one letter. I wrote hundreds of letters until I found a university that would help me. And the first university was Ohio University. They had a phenomenal program that they allowed me to begin my studies. And then I ended up studying with Mercer University. And in 1992, just 4 years after I was taken into the prison system, I had an undergraduate degree. But I remember the journey. I can tell you, the first day that I got those college books, I wasn't a prisoner anymore. I felt as if I was a college student, as if I was truly making progress with my life. And I remember getting those books and just saying, wow, I'm studying psychology and algebra and what was the other one? Astronomy and philosophy. Those were the first 4 courses I took. And then, of course, you take more and more and more. And I was measuring my progress along the way. And I just felt empowered. I felt as if I was really doing what I said I was going to do. I was focusing on becoming an educated man. And then I took the next step. After I got close to graduating, I wanted to go further. And I enrolled, I tried to go to law school. And I wrote to a series of law schools. What am I telling you? It's these incremental action steps. The steps that I took that would get me into the university, same steps allowed me to start studying school and earn my first credits, and then new credits and new credits. And these was these incremental action steps. And then after I'd satisfied all of the requirements of an undergraduate degree, boom, got into a graduate program. It wasn't what I wanted. I wanted to go to law school, but being in prison, I faced some challenges and I couldn't get into law school. But one of the universities that I wrote to, I took the same approach. I wrote to every law school in the country. One of the schools, Hofstra University in New York, said, we can't let you into law school, but maybe we can let you into graduate school if you can pass a probationary period. And sure enough, I wanted to do it. And I'm going to tell you what it was that I wanted to study and why, just after I give a message of gratitude to my sponsor for today. I'm going to thank the Washington State Prison System for a very special reason. One of the directors of the Washington State Prison System, Michael Colwell, gave me an opportunity to bring this course inside Washington State Prison so that I could share this message that I'd learned from masterminds with other prisoners. And I can tell you that by going into that institution and sharing the message with the men inside gave me an extraordinary level of fulfillment, because while I was locked up, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to go back into prisons when I got out. And of course, I've got a full-time job, so I try and go into prisons as frequently as I can. Now I use these technology methods to spread the message inside. But I'm very grateful to Michael Colwell for giving me that opportunity to spread this message to thousands of people in Washington State prison system. Currently, I'm in many other prison systems, and I'm grateful to Michael Taussig in the state of Maine. I'm grateful to Corey Henn in the state of New Mexico. I'm grateful to Brent Choate in the state of California. I'm grateful to so many people who are giving me this opportunity to share this inspiring message, or a message that I hope that prisoners find inspiring, so that they too can see there's a path out. That path doesn't happen by accident. It happens by individuals who follow the mastermind course that Socrates taught me, that Gandhi, that Mandela, that so many others taught me, and that anybody can choose. And now I'm going to continue with that story about how I got into Hofstra. I wrote to these law schools trying to get into law school, couldn't get in because they said they taught by the Socratic method. So again, Socrates having an influence on my life. But one of the schools, Hofstra, said, well, we can't let you into law school, but maybe you'd like to get a graduate degree. What would you like to study if we could? And I said, I really think that our nation's commitment to mass incarceration is one of the greatest social injustices of our time. And I want to have a role in trying to change that. And I'd like to study the prison system if I could. And they gave me that opportunity. They allowed me to get into grad school, even though I couldn't take the graduate records examination, even though I couldn't do a residency, even though I was in prison. I was able to get into school. But besides getting into school, I still needed to pay for it. And I didn't have any money. But you know what I did have? I already had a track record, because I had taken those incremental action steps along the way. And when I was going through undergraduate school, I'd found a series of mentors. And those mentors became influential in my life. And they paid for me to go to grad school, because there was no funding. There was no grad school funding. There was nothing like that. But because I had sown seeds, I found people to believe in me, just as you can find people to believe in you. It's no different. You make a choice every day. Who do you want to believe in you? Do you want to get a prison reputation, or do you want to build a reputation that will cause people in society to see you as something more than past bad decisions? When you do that, then you are creating your own future. And I was so grateful, and I am so grateful, to the many mentors who came into my life and sponsored me by paying for my tuition so that I could earn a graduate degree. And I earned my master's degree from Hofstra, and then what happened? Those mentors opened new opportunities for me. One of them introduced me to his publisher. He was a leading textbook. His name was Professor George Cole. He was the dean at the University of Connecticut, and he allowed me to begin transitioning into a PhD program, even though I was in prison. But George was also the leading textbook author on corrections at the time. And he introduced me to his publisher at Wadsworth Publishing, which was the largest educational publisher. And they offered me an opportunity to publish a book. Now, I can tell you, that was an incremental action step that would not have been possible for me at the beginning stages of my journey. But because I was thinking about my avatars, because I recognized that they wanted me to educate myself, because I recognized that they would have identified an education with a university degree, I pursued that path. And because I pursued that path and then I got those credentials, I was in a position to seize the opportunity and begin my career as a published author. And that publication led to other publications. But you see, that's what I'm trying to show you. It's this series of incremental action steps. Those action steps not only led me to my undergrad degree, didn't only lead me to my master's degree, didn't only lead me to becoming a published author, but they expanded my support network. And as I expanded that support network, additional opportunities opened, even income opportunities opened, whereas I could become a taxpayer even though I was serving decades inside of a federal prison. And what I am urging each of you to do is to recognize that although you're living in challenging times right now, you're living in a period where it seems like there is no hope. You're living in a period where there is a message that's frequently a negative message. I am asking you, look at the masterminds. Learn from the masterminds. Learn from not only people who lived centuries ago, learn from leaders today, business leaders, sports leaders, clergy leaders, any leader. Learn from formerly incarcerated people who transitioned into society successfully, and I feature a number of them on these Earning Freedom podcasts, which I hope are available in your institution. Learn from those people. Learn from people like Sean Hopwood, former bank robber, former meth user, currently a lawyer, graduated from law school with a full scholarship. So many leaders on the podcast who share their stories, and their success began while they were inside of a prison cell, just as it did for me, and just as I know it can become for you. I can tell you that because I thought about my avatars very early on in my journey, my experience through 26 years in prison was fundamentally different from what anybody else would expect. Because of my efforts to reach out, I found the love of my life and got married inside of a federal prison's visiting room in 2003, when I still had more than 10 years of prison to go. And I met Carol, and when I met her, I tried to teach her these same principles. I told her, I remember very clearly, I held out my hand like this. I said, 5 years. If you adhere to this same plan that empowered me through prison, your life will be fundamentally different in 5 years. And that's what I'm urging you to do. Hold out your hand. 5 years. I want you to know how you can transform your life in 5 years. It will not happen by accident. But if you adhere to this principled, deliberate approach, your life will be fundamentally different in 5 years. And I'll tell you something, not everybody got that message in prison. After I got married to Carol, I got transferred from the prison in Fort Dix, New Jersey, and they transferred me to a camp in Florence, Colorado. And when I got to Florence, Colorado, it was my first time in a minimum security camp. I'd just gotten under 10 years, within 10 years of my release date. And I remember getting there, and when I got there, you get transferred in shackles and chains. And I remember getting off the plane, and there were some people that were shifting the buses, and some buses were taking people to the ADX, the nation's most secure prison. Some people were going to the USP. Some people were going to the medium. Some people were going to the camp. I was going to the minimum security camp. But I'll tell you, I knew people that were on that plane because I'd been in prison already for 20 years. And not 20. I guess I'd been in prison for about 16 or 17 years or something like that. But I did my first 7 years in United States penitentiaries, which is high security. And when I got to that tarmac and we're all being separated, I knew some people who were going to the ADX. I knew some people that were going I knew them personally because we were together in prisons where I'd been held previously. And I couldn't talk to them, but I could see them. And, we'd shake, hey, what's up, dude? What's up, bro? You're talking like that. But I'll tell you something. I looked at them and I felt a great sense of sorrow because those guys that were going to the ADX, when we were together in the penitentiary, 15, 16 years prior, they had sentences that were not even as long as mine. I had a long sentence because I was still under the old law, and there were very few people yet coming in the new law. And I had a 45-year sentence that was longer than most people. And these guys that I saw going to the ADX, I remember Galen and Mark and Tom. These were guys that were with me. I worked out with them. And now they were going into the ADX. Why? Why was it different for them than for me? And the answer was really clear. It was because they didn't get exposed to these lessons from masterminds. And they didn't take the same action steps that I took. And I wish that their life was different. But we can't live in the world as we wish it would be. And you can't live in the world as you wish it would be. You've got to say, this is where I am. What am I going to do to change it? I can tell you that this didn't only work for me, this strategy. It didn't only work for Socrates or Gandhi or Nelson Mandela or Martin Luther King or Michael Jordan or Bill Gates or Steve Jobs or anybody else that I call a mastermind from whom I learned and that I wrote about in this course. It worked for my wife. I can tell you that when Carol came in my life and I held her up for singing, I said, in 5 years, your life will be fundamentally different. Well, 5 years after that, I can tell you that she embarked upon the same approach that I did. She made the same value commitment, the same goal commitment. Her attitude was 100%. She had an aspiration of what she wanted to become, and she took action steps. I can tell you it wasn't easy. She was 30, we were 36, 37 years old, and she decided to go back to school. The revenues that were being generated from books I wrote was enough to support her. She went back to school. She had to study algebra. She had to study chemistry, microbiology, all these anatomy and physiology, biology, all of these courses as a prerequisite to get into nursing school. All of this was a plan that says she could become a nurse. If she becomes a nurse, she will be stable. If the Bureau of Prisons transfers me again, she will be able to move with me. And that was always our plan. And she executed that plan. And about 5 years from the time I held up my hand, she became a registered nurse. Now she has her master's degree in nursing. I have seen this recipe for success happen for so many people. And I'm so passionate about bringing this message into jails, into prisons, into schools where young people who have been identified as being at risk of coming into the criminal justice system. I want everybody to see that if we learn lessons from masterminds who have lived before us, we can transform our life. It certainly made all the difference in my journey in prison, and it made all of the difference upon my ability to get out of prison. Now, I served every day of my sentence. I never received a time cut. Under the law that existed when I was convicted back in the mid-1980s, I could satisfy a 45-year sentence in 26 years. So I served 9,500 days in prison, which is 26 years and 2 days. And when I concluded that obligation, I was ready. I had a job I had numerous jobs waiting for me. I had a solid plan. I had opportunities to have a great relationship with my probation officer so that he was allowing me to travel. And I've spoken. You can see these banners behind me. That's me speaking here at Berkeley University, or I've spoken in front of 700 people. I've spoken in universities from New York to Washington State, prisons, corporate America, all over. But all of that was a result of those incremental action steps I took along the way. Every success leads to a new success and a new opportunity. And every time one opportunity closes, another one opens. But every step you take has a relationship to what's going to come for you tomorrow. So that's why I really urge everyone who is listening to this message, everyone in prison, everyone in jail, everyone in a difficult circumstance, see yourself as what you can become. Adhere to this principled, deliberate, values-based, goal-oriented strategy, and you can transform your life. You can become more than what anybody expects that you can be, that anyone expects of you. The only one who puts limits on you is yourself. So liberate your mind, and when you do, you will begin to embark upon the journey of masterminds. This is what I've learned. This is what I feel passionate about. This is what I want to share with you. And so that concludes my lesson or module for today. I'll be back with another module, but I wanted to just say one last parting message to those who are listening to the Earning Freedom podcast in society. If you have access to Apple iTunes, please support this program, not by sending a check, but just go to iTunes, subscribe to the Earning Freedom podcast, rate and review the show, because that is the way we get more distribution around the country and we can change more lives. I am Michael Santos with michaelsantos.com and prisonprofessor.com. And again, I want to thank you for supporting this program. Thank you.